So, what's my view on Jordan Peterson? Well, I don't really take him seriously. Because when he talks about stuff which are not on his field, so non psychological stuff, so for example, philosophy or biblical studies and theology, he sucks a lot, right? Um, so he has some over psychological exegesis of the New Testament or the Old Testament, where he thinks that these are Jungian archetypes of the dragon and chaos and all kinds of crap like that, that don't really have much to do with the actual content of Scripture if you look at them in context based on how ancient Near Eastern populations would have seen that, or Second Temple Jews who lived under the Roman Empire or whatever, right? It's way better to just go to a biblical scholar for this sort of stuff. So, if you want to know what the authors of the text actually meant, at least, if you want to separate the text from the author and also separate it from God in a sense, and just say that, well, it's just a bunch of letters, I'm gonna interpret it in whatever way I want to, then I guess you can go to Peterson for that, but then you can also go to all kinds of others for that sort of thing. You don't need Peterson. And I'm not sure if he's anything specifically good there or whatever, right? When it comes to philosophy, again, he was, for example, he didn't understand Nietzsche. Like, it's a bunch of stuff, but and also what he seems to be doing is. He tries to give some self-help advice aimed at typically something like young men or whatever. And he's seen what's popular from the left, and he just does exactly the opposite. So the left tells you to be vegan, or he says, well, no, just be a carnivore, so eat only meat or whatever. And that's not really sophisticated stuff. I mean, why not eat a combination of meat and vegetables, for example? In general, he seems to care more about being famous rather than producing serious scholarship, and that's another sort of problem. There's a subreddit. It's called, there's Ask Philosophy and then there's Bad Philosophy. And if you go there and search for Peterson, you will find a bunch of threads where they show why he's not really that sophisticated of a person when it comes to things that have to do with philosophy, for example. No, not that great. One example would be when he was asked whether he believes in God, and he said, oh, but what do you mean by God? What do you mean by belief? Oh, that's so difficult, even though not really. You can talk about believe in or believe that. Believe in typically means trust. So whether you trust God, and then there's the believe that, which is a propositional attitude. It's taking a proposition to be true, so taking a proposition that God exists to be true, for example. So there's a simple distinction when it comes to belief. You can easily figure that out. Now, when it comes to what you mean by God, well, there's a pretty standard way that we typically define God in the Western philosophical tradition. Contemporary analytic philosophers, they may talk about the grade-making properties, grade being philosophy or grade being theology. So the sort of properties that if you have, there can be better properties than them, greater than them, so to speak. So if you have them, then you probably are God or whatever. And this would be things like omnipotence, omniscience, being all good, or this is standard stuff, right? And of course, he could have made a distinction between, let's say, the God of Christianity or some general theistic God or something. Like, he said, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? But he's not really actually offering a few options and responding, and then he's not actually answering to what his view is, right? He doesn't say, Well, I'm not sure what you mean, but what I believe is this: he just kind of tries to avoid the question, and that seems dishonest. And for somebody who has a training in philosophy, of course, that seems like garbage to me. Just knowing a little bit of basic philosophy religion, that he's not really doing anything sophisticated there. I am a theist, a Christian theist. And I can tell you, there's a bunch of political stuff as well that you can criticize him for. Overall, no, I don't really take him seriously. I don't think you should waste your time with him. Don't really go there for self-help advice or whatever it is. Find more serious scholars when it comes to philosophy and theology. When it comes to psychology, that's not my field. I don't have too much to comment on, but I know that a lot of psychologists don't take Jung too seriously, and they try something that's a bit more empirically backed, right? So he's a Jungian scholar, maybe, okay, but if there's a problem with Jungian psychology in the first place, and I'm not saying he's not using empirical stuff. Yeah, he is, okay. But if there's a problem with the core of his approach, then there could be a problem with what he's doing in psychology. Although, again, I'm not an expert in psychology, neither am I pretending to be, so I'm not going to comment too much on that. But the fact that he has views on all these other topics, and they're typically not that sophisticated, or the way he backs them up or whatever, they're not that sophisticated, that should be a problem in itself. So overall, do I take him seriously? No. Do I recommend you to watch him? No. Was I ever a fan of him? No. So, again, just find somebody else.